This week on Newsnight Conversations, as Florida lawmakers hammer out how much grant money arts organizations will get for the coming fiscal year, groups in our region are trying to plan for their financial future. What's been the impact of the governor's veto of arts grants last year? What strings may be attached to new funding going forward? How much power will the governor have over funding decisions? Local leaders from the arts and cultural community in Central Florida join us to discuss ways to create, engage, and sustain. A special edition of Newsnight Conversations starts now. Hello, I'm Steve Mort, and welcome to a special edition of Newsnight Conversations. We're recording tonight's program in front of a live audience at the Orlando Science Center with a panel of leaders from arts and cultural groups in Central Florida. It's been a challenging year for some of those groups following the governor's veto last year of arts funding. Well, we'll start tonight with a report from Newsnight's Crystal Knowles.
Ars gratia artis, or art for art's sake. It's a philosophy that art is an experience in and of itself without needing to have a political agenda or any other kind of motive. Mauricio Cespedes Rivero, principal viola for the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra, says he plays for the soul and the music itself.
I serve. That's my purpose in music. I serve. Whether I'm playing principal viola or I'm conducting, I conduct the Orlando Philharmonic often. And whenever I get to do that, I'm a servant to the music first. Make sure in rehearsals and in concert, I do my best. And then I just have fun with the audience, because ultimately everything we do is for them.
Just before last year's state budget kicked in, Governor DeSantis vetoed all $32 million in arts and culture grants. This was over a debate about adult content at fringe festivals. The move blindsided the arts community, sending organizations into crisis mode. In response, Karina Barn, executive director of the Philharmonic, orchestrated a solution.
The Orlando Philharmonic would generally request $150,000 from the state of Florida. And so because of this, each year we receive a portion of that funding. So for several years, we did receive 100%. For some years, we received 75 to 80%. So for us, that means that we will not be receiving $150,000. For us and for many of the arts organizations here in Orlando, we had a variety of choices that we can make. So first, we could remove some programming, restructure some programming, taking a look at our costs to see, okay, maybe we need to remove a concert or do a concert someplace else that might be a little bit cheaper. Or we can look at different ways to increase our revenue. So we did a mixture of both. So we took a look at our expenses, saw what we might be able to reduce for the year, and then we also took a look at our individuals to see if we might be able to just have increased support from any of our largest donors. We were very lucky that we received a $35,000 challenge match from one of our donors, and I'm proud to say that we met and exceeded that.
According to data from the Florida Division of Arts and Culture, almost 600 arts programs and 33 facilities have been recommended for grant funding in the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Stephanie Diaz, a performer who was once able to pick and choose her gigs, says it forced her to live paycheck to paycheck.
It honestly felt like I woke up one day and there was nothing to audition for. That's what it felt like. It felt like I was getting ready for audition season. I knew that, the calls for the theme parks were coming. I knew that, okay, this is usually when this theater puts out their season. And I'm not saying that didn't happen with a couple of the theaters, but on the whole, I felt like I had so much to audition for when I first moved here that I was actually, I had the opportunity to say no because there was so much to audition for. And now it feels like if I don't book this, where's my next paycheck coming from?
Art moves people.
Despite last year's veto, funding is back in the budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, as lawmakers work on the condition arts should meet to qualify for grants.
Oh, come on, baby, you gotta come out sometime.
Meanwhile, some in the arts community see a silver lining to their recent turmoil. Diaz says the situation revealed the incredible resilience of the arts community in Central Florida.
Performing was your plan A. Did you have a plan B?
No. I mean, if I had I love animals. I would have gone the exact opposite route and gone to be a marine biologist if I had felt just as passionate about that as I did about performing. What can I do? What else am I good at? That I think kind of started pushing me towards children's theaters and working with children and realizing that I was good at that I could pass on my knowledge to them.
The most recent numbers from the National Endowment for the Arts show just how big of an impact the arts have on the nation's wealth. The NIA finds the arts contribute to some $45 billion to the economy every year, support nearly 300,000 jobs, and attract nearly a third of Americans to live performances. Another 16% attend art exhibits.
Based on what has happened last year when it comes to funding, what are you hoping for this year?
We are really hoping that our funding is restored for this year. It would be very, very important for us because for 1 year, most organizations would be able to figure out a temporary solution. We are very lucky that we have board members that actually serve as part of the Florida government. So we're actively lobbying, actively championing all of the arts, not just the symphony, to make sure that it is restored for next year.
Meanwhile, Mauricio Cespedes Rivero says the next generation of artists and musicians are witnessing the struggles the community faces, from shifting politics to economic challenges.
My son, Michael, he's only 10 years old. He came to me, he was listening to the conversation I was having with my wife, and he said, "Dad, but I think small art organizations are really gonna be impacted, of course. But you guys have gone through so much." And he reminded me of 2008, the pandemic, and he said, "I think you guys are going to be fine." Because that was a really, really impactful answer. And that tells you of how much our youth is paying attention to what is happening around us. And they're the future. So I'm glad he's living through this. So in the future, we may have a brighter future.
Crystal Knowles reporting there. Well, joining me at the Orlando Science Center to break it all down and what's going on in the arts community, I'm joined by a panel of 5 leaders from the arts community here in Central Florida. Jennifer Evans is President and CEO of United Arts of Central Florida. Thanks so much for being here, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. Chris Brown is the leader of the Orlando Family Stage. Thank you for being here, Chris. Welcome. Really appreciate your time. Joanne Newman, you're the CEO and President of the Orlando Science Center. Thank you so much for having us here today. Really appreciate it. Marianne Eggleston is the founder of the Orlando Urban Film Festival. Good to see you, Marianne. Appreciate it. And also with us today, Melissa Fritzinger, Managing Director of the Orlando Fringe as well. Good to see you. You've been in the news a little bit this year.
Just a little bit.
Good of you to join us here. Jennifer, let me start with you, and we'll talk about the funding part of this. We should mention that we are recording this for air at a later date, so things, of course, can change because lawmakers are in session. As we all know, the governor X'd out those state grants from the 24-25 budget. The budget versions that lawmakers are talking about now has funding back in there, but with some stipulations, right? Can you tell us briefly what the lay of the land is at the moment in Tallahassee, bearing in mind that that might change?
Well, currently they're very narrow stipulations. To give you an idea, we have 83 applicants that are eligible for state funding through the arts and cultural grants, and only 13 of them are in a position to be funded with the current legislation. So they're looking at qualifiers that are very limited, and they're also looking at smaller budgets, smaller amounts of money than what we requested. There were over 400 eligible applicants from the entire state of Florida, and it's worth millions of dollars to all of us. For a total for our television market, it's over $9 million, which is about 10% of our combined budget. So
when we say television market, we mean
so
like
the
a
Central
9-county
Florida,
area, right?
Yes, so Central Florida.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about a substantial impact, almost 10% across the board. And we're businesses, just like any other business. We employ people. And so we're talking about, when you look at it, all of us have to submit very intensive applications. They're about 70 pages long. They look at our governance, our management, our how physically sustainable we are. They look at the impact of our programming. And they also we all get scored on our grant applications. And to be eligible, you have to receive a score of 80. And they chose to only fund groups that scored 95 or higher. So only 13 of our 83 organizations that were eligible scored that 95 or higher, which is a very difficult score to receive in any evaluation. But it's very narrow, and we hope that they'll expand it to be what the eligibility requirements are, as well as really look at the amount of dollars, because we're a huge part of our state's economy.
Well, let's go around the horn a little bit on this one. I'll come to you, Chris. Do you share some of the concerns and the hopes that Jennifer voiced there?
Concerns, frustrations, yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, the legislature is not seeing the value that we provide. And it's even more frustrating that we get into these conversations about state funding, and we're fighting for every dollar, and it's such a small piece of the state budget that it's like, why are we even having to go through all of this for the scraps that we're getting? So we sort of shifted focus on this grant. We scored a 94.5.
Sure.
So we will not be receiving any state funding at this moment. And we're a children's theater. We should be supporting these organizations way more than we already are.
Yeah. Joanne, how does this affect you as the Orlando Science Center? People might not necessarily immediately think the arts. What is the impact for an organization like yourself?
Yeah. We are a larger budget overall organization. Like our audited numbers last year were about an $18 million budget. The amount that we had hoped to get last year that got cut was about $70,000 to $75,000. So it's not a significant piece, but I think the real issue is something that really Jennifer and Chris, I think, both said, is how do we start to get folks to value what's happening in arts, and science is a part of that. I guess we're the culture part, right? Yeah. Arts and culture. And I mean, in terms of the work that we do at the Science Center and the value, and there's so much important work that's being done. I mean, we are trying to, we're really a workforce development engine, and we need to inspire more of our youth to go into these amazing careers in science and technology and engineering. And I mean, we have board members. I was just having a conversation with one of our board members from Lockheed Martin. He's a VP of engineering, and they are desperate for the talent. We need to build these pipelines, and it's a very important part of the work we do. I think there's a huge economic impact, as Jennifer was saying, of all of this kind of work. And so I think the real question is, how do we, get that sort of understanding to occur at the state level, and honestly with I would say with the audience, with all of our audiences, a general public, to value the work that's being done.
It sounded from what you said at the beginning there that small organizations could be disproportionately affected. And Marion, I don't know if you have qualified in the past for grants from the state, but is that the sense that you get, that those of you that run smaller organizations are disproportionately impacted by this funding question?
This was our first time, because we usually just do what we do. Right. And we don't ask for.
So last year was the first time that you had applied.
Last year was the first time we applied. And it's so interesting because a lot of the smaller organizations are in the community per se, face to face with the community.
Yeah.
We're there talking with the schools, the students, and teaching them and helping to train them for to come into other jobs, the engineering, the science center, so that they can be prepared to be able to talk fluently, talk about their future talk about some of their goals. And a lot of times, young people, especially in the urban areas, not just Black or African American, but all diverse students in the community, they need to be trained. They need to be taught. And that's what the arts do. They help them find their innate talents so that then they can use those talents to, do other things in life.
Melissa, let me put this to you. I mean, the programming at the Fringe was somewhat central, I guess, to the governor's decision on funding in the last budget. Just talk to us a little bit, if you can, about how that played out and what you're looking to do going forward in terms of funding now. Are you going to get any? And are you looking at changes to programming as a result?
We are not looking at changes to programming. The way that our programming works is we are a lottery-based festival. So if you have a show and you are interested, then you submit to the lottery. We pull names literally out of a hat, and if you are in the festival, you're in the festival. So we have no control over what shows technically get into the festival.
Okay.
So we are not going to put any kind of
So you don't have control over that at all?
We do not.
Okay.
And we abide by the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals creed, where we are 100% unjuried, 100% uncensored, and these are the things that we are very passionate about. So we are not looking to change any of our programming in that way.
Is that the local funding part of this puzzle, does it become much more important?
I think diversifying your funding is absolutely key in all its forms, local, state, federal, private, corporate, individuals, really trying to diversify that funding as much as you can. And in these times, it's an absolute necessity. If you are reliant upon just one source,
then you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Well, let's talk about some of those strategies for diversifying funding then. Melissa, what does your organization foresee as the future of your funding model? I mean, are you satisfied that your organization's funding sources are diversified enough? How do you go about gaining sources of funding from other places?
So we are really expanding our focus on funding. We're looking at making new relationships with folks and organizations that we have never done before. And, we're of the, we're going to ask, and you can say yes, you can say no, but we're still going to ask.
If you don't ask, you're not going to get
exactly.
it. Right?
So, we're really kind of stepping outside the box and creating new relationships and really cultivating the relationships that we currently have. Corporate sponsorships are one of those things that a lot of organizations are seeing kind of going by the wayside because of the diversity and the inclusion and that kind of thing. So
you find corporations are adjusting their behaviors because of that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's not just us here in Central Florida. It's being done all over. So that is one of those things that we are keenly aware of. But we are really looking at cultivating the relationships that we currently have, and our private donors have really stepped up for us because they believe in who we are, they believe in what we are doing. Because of our freedom of expression, we give everybody that platform to come out and express, say who you are, do what you want to do. And because of that, we've gotten a lot of private donors.
Interesting.
Yes.
How does an organization like yours, Marianne, diversify or have the time to go out and find, because you're a very small organization, how do you go about figuring out that diversity puzzle when it comes to funding when you're, very few hours in the day?
Yeah, so what we did was we just partnered with the big concert promoter. And even though Orlando Urban Film Festival was Orlando Urban Film Festival and Music, now they are Music Fest Orlando. They usually have 12 to 15,000. So we said, well, let's connect and put the music side together with the film festival. But as soon as DEI, the executive orders came down, 3 of our major sponsors backed out. So that kind of knocked the collaboration with Music Fest out a little bit financially. But we now have to pivot, and so we're looking for outside investors, you know? Yeah. So your outside investors, your marketing outside our local Central Florida marketplace, going national, going global, just trying to bring people in.
I want to pick up on what you mentioned about collaboration. And Chris, does collaboration form an important part of trying to diversify funding sources, sharing funding, sharing resources, that kind of thing? Is that an important part of the puzzle, do you think?
I think absolutely. You have to be creative, right? Funding changes every year. I could get funding from, I don't know, Disney for 10 years, and then if they change their priorities, that's going to impact me. And so, you know, I think when collaboration comes into the mix, it's more about creating something exciting, right? Mm-hmm. Creating something that multiple groups of people are going to want to engage with, because that's ultimately going to build those relationships, right? It's so interesting. We've had so much turnover over the last 5 years in our arts sector. It's with turnover goes all of those relationships, and so you're sort of starting over every time.
You mean people leaving the area?
Absolutely, people leaving, artists leaving, designers leaving.
Has it been more so in recent years?
Oh, it's
since COVID for sure. They're starting to come back. Yeah. But I also want to say, you mentioned our local government support. Yeah. You know, what they have been able to do at Orange County is unlike any other community
in the
around.
Country. Yes.
No one has that kind of local support. Yes. So it's really a game changer, and it does provide phenomenal resources to all these groups.
And I just want to add on that because I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, been in the music business, hit music business for years. I don't want to tell my age, but no other state. I lived in Chicago and a few other places, but here I find that we have the biggest support with the city of Orlando, and with United Arts managing those funds to help them. And I think that's what I think really helps the city and the city government to manage the funds so that they can help the arts organizations.
Well, it sounds like local government here is winning some plaudits, but Jennifer, what about the public? What about the viewing audiences, right? I mean, nonprofits writ large, it seems, in this community seem to struggle with fundraising when they go to the public cap in hand for money. How do you view that part of the puzzle, and how do you view the whole diversification of income writ large?
Well, first of all, all of your guests today have great art, great science experience. When you come to the Science Center, it's world class. When you go to the Orlando Family Stage, they're one of the top leading family, theater companies in the country. Mm-hmm. Our ballet is in the top 20 in America. What we have in Central Florida is world-class experiences. We have 13 film festivals. And they're creating the next generation of film production artists and technicians. So when you look at that, when you're in the private sector, we need the private community, whether it's business leaders or families or an individual that have moved here so we have 1,000 people moving here a week. And we need them to see our local arts community as their local home team for the arts. If you want to make this community stronger, investing in the arts is one of the quickest, greatest return on your investment for workforce development, for quality of life, for well-being, for mental health and physical health. So we need our local community to recognize that taking ownership of the success of our local organizations is critical, because we raise within the collaborative campaigns. We've got right now the collaborative campaign for the arts. We talked about collaboration. And when we say arts, we're talking about performing arts, visual arts, literary arts, the Science Center, the History Center, everything about our arts and culture that make us strong. And so when you give to the collaborative campaign, you get to decide I want to give it to some film organizations. I want to give it to youth development organizations. I want to give it to all music. You get to pick those organizations and designate your funds. At the same time, those all gifts are matched by United Arts in Orange County. So we really need the private sector. I mean, last year, our current year, the budget that was cut is our current budgets. We're all living in those right now. Yep. We lost $6.9 million in our region alone in state funding. And so we need the private sector. We need companies, foundations, families, individuals to please give to the collaborative campaign.
And it's so common that people misunderstand that as if we're like starving artists and we need we need all of these organizations to be thriving because that's the impact, right? If we're just having to figure out how to replace $150,000 a month before the fiscal year, like any business is going to have a challenge with that. We got to stop the scarcity mindset for our arts and culture institutions, and we should be shoveling money. Right. I want to see the day where I'm like, what do I do with all this money, right?
Don't we all?
And you know what?
I mean, it would be great, right?
Steve, I think this is really important. We saw, when we talk about impact, the arts in Central Florida are touching 2.5 million people, not 100,000, not 50 people, but 2.5 million people and over 600,000 children. Yeah. So if you want to invest in something that truly touches everyone's lives, we're talking about major impact, not just a small group here and a small group there, but 2.5 million people are impacted by this.
Well, Chris mentioned, that sort of hardship mindset. And I wonder, I'll come to you on this one, Joanne, whether when you talk to your colleagues in other parts of the country who are in the money-raising game as well, do they talk about that as well? Or is that something that we experience here in particular? I often hear that Central Florida is a transient community. A lot of people move in, a lot of people move out. It's difficult to find people with the roots to support the arts and cultural organizations. What do you think about that? I mean, is it rougher here than it is elsewhere?
It may be somewhat. I think there are geographical areas in the country where there are major donors and there's a culture of philanthropy that does seem to exist, that has existed for many years. I would say though, in general, when you do talk to colleagues, everybody is saying, how do we develop a culture of philanthropy? And I think it comes down to telling our stories, just as Jennifer's explaining, and we all need to get better at telling our stories. It's something we talk about all the time at the Science Center.
There is an economic imperative here, right, to funding the arts. There's a large economic impact to it. You guys, the arts community qualifies for tourist development tax dollars for that reason. And I'm wondering how you better demonstrate the economic impact of the arts to policymakers and whether that's part of the puzzle here. Can you make the case more clearly, do you think, to the public and also those who are in charge of the purse strings? Melissa?
I've always thought about this, and this is just, how I think. You've got congressmen, you've got senators. What do they do in their downtime? They read a book, they go see a movie, they go see a play, they go see a musical. Where do they think that's coming from? That's coming from us in the grassroots. When you talk about the Orlando Fringe or Fringe festivals in general, there was a show called Fleabag. There's a movie called Baby Reindeer. Both of those pieces of art came from a Fringe festival. They were a Fringe show that then got developed into a TV show and a movie. This is the art that people are watching in their homes. They're streaming this on their TVs, but they don't come out and they don't come to the theater. They don't come to the festival. And I feel that we need to tell that story about why that's important. And especially, at Orlando Family Stage, I used to work with Chris many years ago as a stage manager. And working with those children and seeing how those children benefit from the discipline of learning how to be on stage, learning stage directions, memorizing lines, that affects the rest of their life so positively. And so telling those stories and making sure that we are talking to the right folks about why it's important is the burden that we bear.
My background is very diverse. My doctoral degree as a professor also is in human communication, and my doctoral study is human communication. And this is what the arts does. It develops the person from the inside out, and if we didn't have the arts, people wouldn't, even myself, I was on my way to be an accountant and ended up in the music business. So where would people be if they couldn't discover themselves?
It's so interesting though, because I talk to parents every day, and many of those parents are not nervous, that's too strong of a word, but maybe hesitant to send their child to a theater camp. And I always have this moment of, we're not here to turn your child into a Broadway superstar. Like, that is not the point. The point is to make sure your child can stand here and talk to people.
Talk to public speaking.
Right? We need children to be able to be confident and be brave and care about their neighbors and have some empathy for the world. Like, that's what these art forms do.
Well, I'm really interested in this next generation question, and I wonder whether that is also part of the answer to the philanthropy problem. The earlier that you get kids interested in arts and culture, does that make them future supporters of the arts? I mean, is it about getting them early?
It's 8 years old. There's a very clear cliff in the research. By the age of 8 years old, if you interact a young person in arts and cultural activities, they will be lifelong patrons of the arts. But if you miss that window, it's something like 70% harder to get them back into this room.
I mean, how do we address that sort of gap in arts education, Joanne, especially sort of in young people, but also underrepresented communities as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're big believers in reaching children as young as we possibly can. We have our own preschool here at the Science Center. So we start with 3 and 4 year olds. We're teaching science, we're teaching critical thinking skills. And that's really, I think, what we're talking about is trying to build these skills that are so important. Not that you become a Broadway actor or actress, not that you become necessarily an engineer or a scientist, but that the impact to our youth, the experiences that they're having are very enriching, and building skills that will help no matter what you choose to do with your career.
I would love to add to that. I think it's so important for people to know that there is absolute research that shows that kindergarten readiness, there are 5 indicators of kindergarten readiness that every kindergartner is tested for. 4 of the 5 indicators for kindergarten readiness can be taught through the arts. So if we have only 50 or 51% of our children in the state of Florida are ready for kindergarten. We have an education crisis and we have a workforce crisis. So if we're looking at future workforces and only half of our kindergartners are ready for kindergarten, where do you think they're going to be on 3rd grade reading? Where are they going to think they're going to be on 5th grade math? So it's 8th grade math. So it's critical that we understand that in Joanne's early in her preschool program, they're teaching science through music. The children are singing. I've seen them. It's amazing. They're singing about science. Well, they're learning science by that repetitive song. And so if we're really going to look at the workforce crisis that we have, we need to look at the education crisis. And the greatest way to have early wins in preschool and early early childhood is through arts education.
We're going to take some questions from the audience in a moment, but just to wrap up this portion, I wanted to find out from each of you what you're excited about, what kind of projects you're working on in your organizations that are innovative, interesting for the public to know about. And I'll start with you, Melissa.
So the Fringe Festival officially opens on May 13th with our opening ceremonies and ribbon cutting. That will be happening at Orlando Family Stage. Yeah. And then we start shows on the 14th of May and run all the way through Memorial Day. We've got a kids fringe component at the Garden Club, which is super fun. We take all kids, doesn't matter if you're 80 years old and you're a kid, you can come hang out, you can paint, you can do all kinds of fun stuff. We have a visual fringe component as well, where we have a gallery that's at the Orlando Shakespeare Theater. And we're really excited. This is going to be our 34th year. Here in Central Florida, we are the longest running fringe festival in the country. Yes. And we are really, really proud of that. We are really proud of that. And along with the other arts organizations, we've had a pretty tough year financially, but we are still here, we are still kicking, and year 34 is going to be great.
All right.
Marianne, what are you excited about?
Well, oh man, I'm excited about so much. Number one is that we just partnered with Music Fest Orlando. And one of the things that we need to make sure with grant organizations is that the partnerships with for-profit organizations can be okay. Because we just realized that since the DEI stopped some of our funding, we're looking to partner with for-profit organizations because they have funding and they can help us. But our event is August 28th, 29 and 30. We're downtown at the CMX Movie Theater. We get, right now we have about 70 films that have been submitted. And then we do our awards program at the Dr. Phillips. Okay. And that is fantastic. So we do give community awards. We let the young people come and perform on stage. So it's pretty exciting. And the other thing is everybody should get involved with AI. It's coming. The music business kind of dwindled out because of technology, and it took 20 years, and nobody believed that RCA A&M Arista record company could go down. Is
AI really a good thing in the music business, do we think?
No, I'm saying back in the day when digital came in, digital music.
Yeah.
But now
you mentioned AI.
Yeah, but AI music is coming in, and there's a big fight about that.
But
AI in the arts and performing and immersive arts, so we need to be looking at all of these things to see how we can include them in our programming.
Well, you're from the Orlando Science Center. I guess AI is something that you guys must have your eyes on. Is that an important part of the way that the landscape looks going forward, do you reckon?
We use technology in exhibits, but we don't use it for the sake of the technology. We're really about the experience and how can it enhance the experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how we look at that. Things we're excited about. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Life exhibit, which will be open for 1 year this month, which was our largest and most complex ever. Nature and conservation, so please check it out. And the project that we're hoping to break ground on in August of this year is a full renovation of the Dr. Phillips Cinedome, which is our 8-story large format theater. And Marianne, you'll appreciate this. It actually you talk about film festivals, it actually still runs film. So that's why we need to renovate.
Oh, yes.
It's a large format film and big platters and people are threading those things and it's amazing. Yeah. But we are going to we're going to bring in 8K digital laser projection. There will be about 10 projectors to meet the full dome. A whole new surface, which is a pretty incredible surface. It's supposed to be the best projection surface that exists. So the interior skin of the dome becomes the new surface. We'll do all new seats. It'll be all new sound.
How many seats?
The seats in there are just over 300.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the other theater. Well, come to see me. It's the other theater here at the Science Center on the other side of the building.
Beautiful.
But it's a gorgeous 8-story dome, and we will bring back planetarium shows, and I'm so thrilled for that. The technology is amazing.
That's
what
an
we could
exciting
do.
project, yeah.
Yeah.
I must say, sometimes the old school excites me. I came up cutting 1/4-inch tape with razor blades, sticking it together. Chris, what are you excited about?
Well, to your point, that sounds world class.
Yeah,
that
that's right.
theater,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
I have a ton of stuff to be excited about at the moment, but it is all under the umbrella, and you might not believe this, but our organization is about to celebrate a centennial.
Wow.
It's hard to believe anything was here 100 years ago, but this organization has had an affinity for children's programming since 1926, and I'm so excited to tell that story and pull out all those archives and show all of the incredible leadership that it takes to survive that long. And that's really exciting. So that's 2026 Centennial.
Last word to you, Jennifer.
Well, all of them, and there are, about 125 arts and science and history organizations that we work with, and all of that information is listed at artsanorlando.com, and there are thousands of summer camps, thousands of summer camps. There are over 600 free exhibits and free shows and free festivals, and there's so many ways that the arts meet people where they are in our community. And all of these organizations have outreach programs that go into schools and go into neighborhood associations and community centers. And so I'm excited. We are in a really exciting time. Orange County, the city of Orlando, they're doing a joint master plan for the arts. So the public is saying this is our future, which says they're planning for the future, which means we're going to all be around, and that they want us and that they can't wait to have more of the arts in their lives. So that cultural plan is critical to the future and us responding to what the community wants for the future.
So let's go ahead and take some questions from the audience here. And the first one that we have is, how do the theme parks, such as Disney and SeaWorld, Universal, support, it says here United Arts, but I guess the arts in general? Jennifer, I'll put that one to you.
Well, they're very supportive because they know that we're workforce development for them, and we are a core part of the body of workers that have either trained with them and made our cultural sector stronger, or that they're looking for us as a pipeline. I mean, Universal and Disney support arts education because they know that they need more strategic thinkers. They need more problem solvers. They need people that enjoy working backstage and on the stage and running the tech. They need people that are constantly looking at the evolution of technology in the entertainment industry, which is what Marianne and Joanne do. So, we've got the Fringe is known for improvisational. That happens at Disney and Universal all the time. The other thing is we've talked about public funding a lot, but because of those theme parks, we've got just, as Chris said, incredible funding for the arts through the tourism development tax.
Well, this next question is somewhat related to that. How do you envisage or envision the elimination or potential, elimination of property taxes affecting theatre? The governor has basically made a point that we should be asking visitors to pay more in our tax base rather than taxing local people. I wonder how you see that source of funding going forward. Will property tax elimination have much of an effect? What do you think?
That might create more disposable income for families to participate, or homeowners to donate to the arts, because it is still a tax deduction to contribute to nonprofit organizations. And so it's very possible that this frees up funding that comes through the private sector. I know that some of the funding for the arts comes from the general fund of Orange County. And so that general fund is funded through various tax revenues. So that is something to consider. But I hope that people have more disposable income and they'll either enjoy the arts or they'll give.
Good question, for sure. The next one we have here, how do smaller arts organizations attract the type of philanthropy that is usually going to larger organizations? We always go into theaters and things, and there are names of foundations up on the wall and all of that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily something that smaller arts organizations can benefit from, right?
Well, we benefit from it through larger organizations like United Arts or other larger organizations. But to have the other larger foundations give to us, I think one thing that I've learned is that I have to ask. You know, at first I was really reluctant. I wouldn't say reluctant, but just not putting a lot of effort towards asking. And now we're going to be asking more. But we need to know who those organizations are. And one thing on that, last year we were in the collaborative campaign with United Arts. We weren't accepted, but people were given to us just because they knew who we were. So those bigger foundations and so forth, whether they give directly to us or give to United Arts, the monies are still going to trickle down to the smaller organizations.
And of the 40 organizations that are in the collaborative campaign, only 20 of those organizations have budgets of $1 million or more. So 20 of them are considered small, very small, and even in America, until you get to the $5 to $18 million, or in some, obviously in larger cities. So a majority of the arts organizations in Central Florida are considered small organizations. And by participating in the collaborative campaign, somebody might get a letter from the Orlando Family Stage or the Science Center and learn about French, or learn about Art Reach, or learn about Page 15, or learn about some of our smaller groups, because their name is on that big list, for sure.
And that's how we get recognized. Our name was on the list. Thank you.
All right, next question. What type of organization or company, if brought to the Orlando area, would support or benefit the continued growth of the arts in Central Florida? And how would we know or identify that we have reached our goal in creating a successful and thriving arts culture in Central Florida? I guess, the work is never done, right? But in terms of what types of organizations or companies would benefit the arts if brought to this area, got any thoughts?
I think every single company out there needs people that have gone through the arts. I go back to my roots of creating theater and creating a show. That means that designers and actors and directors and all of these people have to work together to create the thing. And then they have to go through all the rehearsal. They have to go through all the technical rehearsals. And then it's going to open. That audience is only going to see those actors on that stage. And so there's 3 times more people making all of that work. And so the process of putting together a show is no different than launching a product or creating a new business. Or you need collaboration, you need creativity, you need all of these qualities. And so that's so important to any business. Businesses need creative people, or they're not going to solve hard problems.
And I just want to agree with Chris on that, because people that get involved with the Orlando Urban Film Festival, they're the creative people, they're hosts, they're makeup artists, they do all kinds of things, but they work for companies. They get off work and then they come and volunteer. So it helps the organization, the company, the corporation, because now they have someone who's doing something creative and learning how to communicate and participate.
Look at our space and technology industries. Look at the health and biotech industry that's here. If you were to ask employers to survey their employees, how many of them play an instrument? How many of them have to write every single day in their job creatively to get someone to do something, right? There's not a skill set that the arts provide that employers don't need. Also, if you're moving your company here, you're bringing people with you, or you've got to attract people to fill those jobs. And people don't want to live in a community where the arts are not thriving, because they're bringing with them a child that wants to write or be in the theater or to dance, or bringing with them a partner or a mate that works in the arts. So when you think of all the industries that we're attracting, they want to live, they want their employees to live in a great community where there's education, where there's places to play and green space, but they also want arts and culture. And people come here from all over the world, and they want to see their cultures reflected in their community. And so it's just, when you look at any strong economic community, the arts and culture are strong too. And the nonprofit culture supports that.
One final question. What opportunities are there for businesses large and small to support arts organizations? I guess this goes to, if you're a business and you want to begin philanthropic work when it comes to the arts, what do you do? Where do you go?
Well, if you come to the Fringe.
It's a good
I give you my
answer.
card. Where's that person? I got a card right here.
Exactly. Box and bag of cards.
Yeah. But how do people know where to start?
I think it's just becoming involved in what is happening in your community. So if you are a family that has a couple of kids, and you might own some kind of a well-to-do company that is here in Orlando, and you go to the Orlando Family Stage and you see Diary of Your Wimpy Kid, and your kids are just overjoyed, and you see how much fun they're having, and then maybe you think, gosh, I should make this accessible for everyone. I should be able to give some money that maybe they can use for outreach to go to these underserved communities and give those kids a chance to experience the same thing. We always talk about how, we as the Orlando Fringe, we have a 2-week festival once a year. We see over 50,000 people in those 2 weeks. And the sponsors and the donors all have an opportunity to be recognized, whether it's in our program, on our website, their name is on something that's at the festival, and that gives them a sense of pride knowing that they're giving to an organization that is bringing arts and culture to Lock Haven Park for 2 weeks out of the year, and they get to see how impactful that is to not just our community here in Orlando, but the arts community just in general, because we have national artists that come, we have international artists that come, and it's an overwhelming impact on just how the arts and culture can affect you as an individual going out into the world. And so that is one of those things that we're really working forward, trying to find these new sponsors and new donors that may not have ever thought about it and said, wow, an arts organization gives you a peek behind the curtain into so many different types of people. Those folks that work backstage, those, that kind of thing. You don't necessarily think about those people when you go to the Dr. Phillips Center and you see a show. But without those folks, the show doesn't happen. So having the ability to, if you are a person that has, some, diversified funds that they can give to an arts organization, there are many ways that we recognize those folks. And hopefully that is one of the things that would encourage more people to come forth and become philanthropic to the arts.
The other thing is, Central Florida is all about hospitality. So if you're a business and you want to get in front of people, it's really easy because we will collaborate with everybody, right? So it's really not hard as soon as you start peeling back layers and connecting with people. right?
They can buy group tickets. We have amazing, unique and diverse meeting spaces. So if you want to have a team building exercise, or you want to bring your clients to something, or you want to get your whole company away just to take a break from your company, buy tickets, have unique meeting spaces. But every company, every foundation, every individual can give to all of these groups and more through the collaborative campaign. It's not just for individuals. Companies can give also through the collaborative campaign and receive a tax deduction.
And you have your Orlando Economic Partnership book right there. So a wonderful example. Over the holidays in December, we were doing Charlie Brown Christmas, and the OEP brought their whole staff for a team building day. And they came to Orlando Family Stage, and they unloaded all the kids off the bus and moved all their coolers all of that volunteer. And then they get to sit in the theater and watch the show with 300 kids, and they leave with such great energy and feeling like they contributed and gave back. It's a great way to be involved as a corporation.
Well, we shouldn't have to wait to depend on the government to fund us. It's the community, it's the corporations. Look at all the businesses here that 70 million people come in and support. Every business should support directly or indirectly through United Arts or Orange County, every business here, because tourism is big. Orlando Urban Film Festival, we may be mid-sized now, not so much small, but we bring hundreds of people in each year, tourists, you know?
Well, I think that's a good place to end it. I feel like we could continue this conversation for hours, but we do have to wrap it up. Fascinating discussion this evening.
Beautiful, good questions.
Well, thank you so much to our panel here at the Orlando Science Center. Meanwhile, we'll see you next Friday night at 8:30 here on WCF. From all of us here at Newsnight and also our panel at the Orlando Science Center, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.